Welcome to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet. Hosted by LynnDee Horn, a licensed counselor and owner of Narrow Gate Counseling Services. The Merge provides a biblical approach to mental health and navigating life's challenges. Join us as we explore practical, Christ-centered solutions for mental wellness, relationships, and spiritual growth.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to The Merge, where faith and mental health meet. I'm your host, LynnDee Horn. Today, we're going to be talking about faith, mental health, and how to support those around us that may be struggling with a mental health concern. So to talk with me on this topic is my friend, Becca Autry. Becca, welcome to The Merge.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Glad to be here.
Yay. I'm so glad that you're here for this conversation because I just really think that you are, you're really going to be able to speak to this topic well. So tell us or tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am from this area. I grew up in this area. Married my husband, and we have served in North Carolina, South Carolina, Vermont, and Pennsylvania in the ministry. We have a 14-year-old, and I'm a music teacher, so I enjoy doing that. And the joy of my heart these days is just supporting my family and helping women get closer to the Lord.
Awesome. Now tell me a little bit about that, because I know that in different places when you serve and you have different roles in ministry, like women's ministry kind of looks different everywhere.
Yeah.
So what does that like now? How does that look for you?
Okay.
What are you able to do?
For me, in the past, I've been able to throw a tea party and all those good things, or throw an event. But that's not really where the Lord has me right now. In our church especially, we serve Temple Baptist Church in Eastover, and they have these amazing women who know how to do amazing things like that. They have dinners and outreaches and ministries to other women.
I saw
spa
that.
days,
Oh.
yes, all the things. So that's not really
Give me some of that.
where I'm needed or most necessary. But the Lord has seen fit, probably about 10, 15 years ago, to just give me a heart for women understanding the Bible for themselves, not feeling like they had to read other books secondary to the Bible, or that they had to necessarily feel like they had to follow a certain person to know the Bible more, but that they could read Scripture.
That's so good.
You know, I'm reading You Are a Theologian right now, Jen Wilkin, and I can't remember the other author. But it's kind of what God's put in my heart. So that's what I really enjoy doing, is sitting down with women. So I am a part of 2 discipleship groups right now. I'm trying to help start them and then leave them and let people lead them. But that's really where my heart is. That's really what I enjoy.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing in that, and also knowing that you're a music teacher, also knowing that you do homeschool and those things, it sounds like you have a gift as a teacher.
Yeah. One time I heard somebody say that if you couldn't read something and not tell someone else, then you're a teacher. So if you bring some information into your life and then you have to tell somebody else, you're probably an educator. And yes, that's probably me. Yeah, I definitely I enjoy that, but also I have a personality that enjoys to correct things. So that's not a great part of my personality. So I always tell people with piano, I get to sit and correct somebody for 30 minutes, and it's not hurting them, and it's for their good, and
you found a way.
It serves a purpose, I guess.
You have found a way. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell myself here. I may or may not be a little nosy. Okay. But I feel like I sanctified that by becoming a counselor, right?
Okay.
Because
I feel you. Yeah.
people are coming wanting to tell their story.
But don't you think that's how the Lord, I mean, let's not over spiritualize it, but don't you think that's how the Lord can use those kinds of things?
Oh, yeah.
That He puts those things in us, for me to sit and correct someone so that they can be excellent at something.
Yeah.
Is not belittling them, but it does serve this little purpose in my heart of order. I enjoy order.
Yeah.
I enjoy, if I need to relax, I need to watch Food Network because I need something to start and finish. I need something
There's the ingredients.
Yeah.
We know how much.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know that the end
Yeah.
result's going to be something
That's right.
yummy.
Yeah, I need to see something I've seen
Maybe I need to
1,000
watch
times.
that more.
I need to see something I've seen 1,000 times that I know is going to turn out okay, because I need that order. So I do think that we could probably put that in an unhealthy balance, but I do think that God can use those things. So yeah.
He sanctifies them. He makes them work.
That's right.
So when you went into you've talked, well, before I actually say that, you mentioned some really cool places that you have been and lived. Do you have a favorite?
I do not have a favorite.
Okay.
This may sound it sounds wild, but the Lord has turned my heart towards places and people every time we've been somewhere else.
Oh, that's so awesome.
He's been gracious to go before us. I would say he put a love in our hearts for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I mean, like it was Hawaii or something. I mean, like we just fell in love with the thought of it. And when we got there, we were so in love with that city and for the Lord that we thought we'd be there forever. And when we left, we were heartbroken. And I remember praying, Lord, don't ever let me love someplace like this. But I've loved everywhere. Vermont, I miss the snow.
Oh yeah.
But
I've heard it's beautiful. I've never been. It's on my list.
It's worth your time.
Yeah.
I would say go in the summertime, though, because it's green and beautiful and luscious, and hiking is, that's
and
the time
the temperatures are
better right now. Like the fall here.
Yeah.
Yes. It feels like November. It feels like November in January. I mean, in July, and it's great. It's great.
That sounds awesome. My hot-natured self would enjoy that for sure. So when you got into ministry, what did you think that it was going to be like? When I'm asking this question, you remember that meme, or have you seen that meme on social media? But it's like, this is what I think I'm doing. This is what other people think I'm doing. This is what I really do. Like, that's what I think about with this question. Because I think we all have this idea of when we go into something, what it's going to be like. And it's very interesting how God allows that to play out. So what did you think it was going to be like?
So when God put me and my husband together in ministry, I had already been in ministry for about 3 years. The Lord called my heart to music ministry, and I had been a choir director. This is 25 years ago, so things look different in the church, in the worship world. But I was a choir director and a worship leader. I helped churches integrate music from hymns to blended worship. So I had given the Lord my yes in that way. And I said, Lord, I'll serve you until he comes, if you've got somebody for me. And I really felt in my heart, I know it sounds silly, but I did feel in my heart that I was going to marry a pastor.
I don't think that sounds silly.
I know.
I think he gives us
these little inklings.
Vision.
I don't know. But I did feel in my heart that, have you ever heard that run towards God, and then while you're running, if someone is running alongside you, you follow them, and then you link up and you serve together. And that's just how my marriage has worked. But church has changed in 25 years.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
So, our first churches that we served, I was folding bulletins, and I was, we lived next door, and I was visiting quilting clubs to talk to the ladies in the church, or to see what the ladies are talking about in the church. Yeah. I was directing choirs and doing interesting things like that. And 20 years later, we've been married 22 years. So I've been in the church for 25. But 22 years later, it looks very different. Very different. I'm much more supporting my husband. I'm much more keeping a household of peace. I'm much more, I think having children makes that different too. You're much more hands-on before you have children. Anyway, I think that the call to ministry that we both have has had us together as a unit, and that's been really exciting. Because I see some pastors' wives that they don't really get to be a unit with their husband, or they feel secondary, and I've never felt that. God's been gracious to have us as a team. So
that's great. So, okay, so it's changed. Some of it looked like what you thought. Maybe some of it didn't, just because of just the big change in church and how we worship and technology and all of the things. Like you said, bulletins.
Yeah.
Those were, I still honestly really appreciate when I go to a church and they, on Sunday morning, hand me like the schedule, right?
Yeah.
Or then they have the announcements on one side that you can read for the week. Like, I still actually appreciate that.
Well, the announcements, if nothing else, is the nicest thing to have. Yes. I concur.
But I think I'm like, I get a bulletin. So anyways,
souvenir.
Yes. I think it's great. So what has surprised you the most about ministry, or even certain roles that you've played throughout those years?
I think one thing that's been surprising is how maybe you think you have real relationships with people in the church, and sometimes they're not real. Sometimes you think you're serving a good purpose, and sometimes your help isn't helping. That's kind of different than what you think. You go into it thinking, I'm going to help everybody. I'm going to love everybody with the love of the Lord, and God's plan is going to be known to us and them at the same time, and it's going to be the same thing, and we're going to all just stand around and sing praise to the Lord and be done with it. It's just going to be perfect. And that's not the case. Sometimes it can be hard when you feel that you believe something that maybe some people in your church don't believe. We've been in situations where we were inviting certain people groups into the congregation that weren't welcome.
Oh, wow.
And that became a huge issue. Can you worship in a place where you wouldn't invite somebody to? So that's been like the biggest, when you just don't know your people. So that was a long time ago, but those kinds of things can be hard. And I think as you go further and further, 22 years down the road, we're both careful and we have boundaries, but we also know that people are human, and we give a lot more grace than we used to. Probably, I think that we're probably more gracious to difficult situations than we may have been in the start.
I just think the longer we're in this life, in this race, like, we just get perspective that we don't have. Like, I think I just continue to realize, and not in a discouraging way, but that issues are complex.
Yeah.
It's not really, and I'm not saying God's truth isn't black and white, because I believe that it is in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I believe the nuances of a situation or a people group or it's complicated.
Yes.
And it's complex, and we have to navigate it with an understanding, with wisdom, with grace, with just tenderness. I think we have to do all of that. Kindness.
Yeah. People made in the image of God are worth our time. They're worth our time, not to just look at something they've done, but look deeper into where it's come from or what they've been through. It's worth our prayer. It's worth us investing in learning about other people. I mean, it's worth us reading books about things we don't understand, or trying to put our thoughts into people's worlds that something can seem so foreign to us. And we can just say that's not godly, but we don't know where it's come from, and we don't know where they stand. And so you have to be very careful not to judge people and then just be done with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that for me, it helps me dig into the Lord more, because I can't put it in a box. Like, things are way more gray than I used to give them credit for.
Yeah.
So it's making me continue to pursue the Lord in a way, because if I'm trying to be his hands and feet, I need to know what he says about it.
Yeah. And for me, who loves order, this world is not in order. No. It's not. So I'm craving the God of order to come and speak to my heart in situations that are just so hard to fathom. They're just so hard to understand. So,
yeah, absolutely. So I believe you're in this category, or anybody that's in ministry. I also would put cosmetologists in this category, and a few other people as well. But did you know that you signed up to be a counselor without a clinical license? Like, were you aware? I mean, I know we joke about it. We even joke about that when we go get our hair done with the, whoever cuts our hair. But I think it's this place of, I think maybe we kind of know, or we have an inkling of that, but we don't really know until we're engaged in this. Like, yeah.
I think that I knew there would be times where I would be necessary to be in a room with counseling, but I don't think that I realized to what extent I would be called on by the Lord to meet people in moments that I wasn't prepared for, or that I was going to have to lean on him completely. So yes and no.
Yeah. I think we're like, okay, I can do that. And then you get in the middle of it, or then you hear a really complex story, and you're like, wow, God, this is out of my scope.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh, wow.
And you just start praying. I mean, when you're the secondary person, when I'm the second person in the room, I have the luxury of just giving it to
But
the
how
Lord.
amazing is that?
Just
That
giving
you
it to the
can,
Lord and just saying, give my husband the words that he needs, calm a situation, bring peace, just whatever, I'm seeing, I'm able to just sit and pray and just maybe just put my head down and pray.
Yeah.
That may be all I can do sometimes.
and that's a lot. I think intercession is so powerful,
Yeah.
especially if you're doing it in the moment.
Yeah.
So if you're being able to do that real time, that's pretty great.
Sometimes that's all you got.
Yeah, maybe that's what.
I mean, sometimes that's all you need, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't mean to belittle it at all, but
As a biblical counselor, sometimes we just stop and pray.
do you?
Yeah, like if we're really at a place, I'm like, you know what, I really think we just need to hear from the Lord right now. And because of what I do, and the people that specifically the clients that are coming to me, I have the freedom to do that, and we will. Sometimes we will just sit, and I'll be like, "You pray, I pray. Let's see what God does."
Yeah.
And He's faithful. He comes
Yes.
through every time
Yep.
with something.
Yep.
That we can talk about, and it's so cool.
Yeah. The way when we pray, that means we're giving back our words and our thoughts to the Lord. And when we do that, He's able to break down a wall that we didn't know how to break down. Like He does things that we cannot do. And that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
It's super amazing, especially when you can be part of it and experience it right in the middle of it. So I think that, well, let me ask one more thing. So in all the roles and all the hats that you've had to navigate, like how do you stay, I mean, you've had moves, you meet new people, and you're building relationships, and then God moves you somewhere else. And I think it's awesome that He's giving you a heart for that next place that you go. But like, what keeps you centered? How do you navigate that well?
Well, I'm married to someone I really enjoy being with.
Yeah.
And the Lord has put us on the same page about most things in timely manners. So it's not like one of us is pulling the other one. We have really good family that loves us. I have some good friends from second grade that are my
Yeah.
texting prayer partners.
Yes.
You reach out and
I
say,
have those. Yeah.
and then they write you back and say, "Do you
Keep
need a
me
coffee?"
grounded.
Yeah. Or yeah. So that really helps. I just think that knowing that we come from the generation that read Platt's Radical
Yeah.
and Francis Chan, gosh, what was the other book? Crazy Love.
Yeah.
And those two books really encouraged us to just put it on the line for the Lord, to trust Him, and to just step our foot out for Him, for His glory, for His honor. And when you do that, it kind of just happens. And it's not always pretty. It can be messy. But I feel like Chris and I, that's my husband, that we have just built this prayer life and this moment where together we're a unit. So moving can be tough. It's hard. It's very hard to leave people when they're not ready for you to leave them.
Yeah.
And you don't know that until you've left them. And that can be really difficult. We've had, friendships we imagined would be forever were not forever. They were just for that time and just for that season. And I wasn't prepared for that. Just because of what God had woven in our lives together. So that can be a difficult part of it. But I think mainly that just knowing that we're on the same page and walking this journey together and knowing when the Lord has shut a door. Sometimes it's been in our face. And sometimes it's been...
Like, well, that was clear.
And sometimes it's been just this nudge that you've done what you can for me, and I need you somewhere else. That may sound silly too, but
It doesn't.
But we truly believe that God can do that. So it can be difficult, but I think for the main part that it's because we're centered around giving God our yes, that He has established. He's established the path for us, and it's exciting to see where He wants to take us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not scary.
Yeah. It's more just like we're going to live in your goodness and expectation and just want to travel the path that you have for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of peace in that.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. Because there's not a lot of peace in other things.
No.
This world doesn't give us peace. Parenting doesn't always give us peace. Taking care of our parents doesn't always give us peace. Marriage doesn't always give us peace. So, really centering our lives around Christ and trying to serve him, it does bring peace, for sure.
Awesome.
We're not fighting him.
Yeah, that is not going to bring you peace in your life,
Exactly.
not fighting him, okay?
Exactly.
He's going to win.
That's right.
I'm just saying.
That's right.
All right, well, this is a great place to take a break. And when we come back, we'll get more into the mental health piece of this and helping others. So we will be back on the other side of this break.
Narrow Gate Counseling, providing professional counseling where you are. At home, at work, or on the go. Our virtual counseling services are convenient, affordable, and accessible on any device. For a free consultation, call 888-9-NARROW. That's 888-962-7769. Connect and learn more now at narrowgatecounseling.com.
Well, hello. Welcome back to The Merge. I'm your host, LynnDee Horn, and I am sitting here with my friend Becca Autry, and we are talking about faith, mental health, and how to support those around us with mental health concerns. So when you got into the field of ministry, like how did kind of the topic of mental health and counseling, like how did that really kind of come up for you? Because I know for me, going to school, that was my focus, right?
Yeah.
I was learning about that. I was learning theories about it. I was going to help move people through change.
Yeah.
But, you know, in ministry, especially if you even do go to schooling, I mean, you're learning more about ministry. You may have classes at times on counseling, but that's not really anywhere near the forefront of any of your training. So what did you know about mental health, and how have you grown in that knowledge?
I didn't know a ton about mental health. You would call it counseling, especially when we first started. And we learned pretty quickly that you can only counsel so much before you might need to bring somebody else in.
Yeah.
Trusted biblical counseling. And that was freeing for us. Not everybody loves that in the church. Sometimes people think that a pastor should be able to do it all. And some pastors do. Some pastors come in with a counseling degree.
They do, yeah.
And that's their thing. So, pastors, they each have their own thing. My husband is an expositor of the word. That is his gifting, and he is a good shepherd.
He's good at it, yeah.
Yeah, and so those are the things that he excels at. And so, administration may not be it. and at the end of the day, counseling may not be it for a long time. Like we end up dealing with something very traumatic most of the times when it comes to us, and then we sit with it for a while, and then we help them move on to something that's going to be safe and biblical and intensive when we see those kind of situations. And if I'm honest, in the past 20 years, they're increasing. These traumatic situations are increasing. Things that people are dealing with are harder and harder and harder. And I'll just tell you this. My husband, the gift of discernment or seeing things or understanding, my husband says I can read a room like nobody else. And so that's been a gift, because sometimes he doesn't see that someone's in need or someone is dealing with something. And I can just kind of say, they've walked in the past 3 Sundays with their head down. We should call and check on them, or something's going on. And he can check on them. And the other thing is, when I don't in our church right now, but when I was a worship leader, I was standing in front of the people, so I could see maybe someone was downtrodden or somebody needed to be checked on. Or somebody isn't in their normal seat for the last 6 weeks, or just different things
That you wouldn't normally notice if you didn't have that point of view.
That's right. The Lord's been gracious in that way to put that on my heart. There's an example. There was a girl who was crying. I was playing a song, and we were worshiping, and I thought, this is not a crying song. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm just going to watch her. I'm going to watch her for the rest of church. And when it came time for the sermon, of course, I usually sat on the front or the second row, because that's just classic, right?
Yeah.
But I thought, I'm going to go sit with her. I'm just going to go. It's going to be weird. And if she has a sinus infection, I'm going to be real embarrassed. I just thought all the things. But I went and I sat next to her, and she was going through something really horrible. She was considering some really horrible things to do to herself. She was scared, and it was going to be the last time she came to church, and I didn't know it.
Wow.
And it was terrifying. It was terrifying, but it was also just that the Lord had allowed me to see something. The fact that He sees us, and that He would allow someone, when I'm in a place like that, that if He would allow someone to see me, to reach out to me on His behalf, is huge. And so that's an honor in the world of counseling or dealing with things like that. And so to me, that's one of the biggest things is I try to be aware. I try to just always pray when I'm entering the church, when I'm seeing people. But I also just try to look who's not hanging around the way they used to, or what's different. And I found that to be just a help to my husband. Even if it's nothing, even if somebody just says, I just had a bad week, then I can say, well, I can pray for you and move on. But sometimes it's bigger than that.
And I think that's another reason that's important. This isn't in my notes, but just thinking about this type of stuff, why community and going and worshiping with fellow believers can be so powerful. Like, you don't know when you're going to need that.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I mean, and I don't know the lady that you were talking about in your story. I don't know if she'd been there before. It was her first time. But either way, her coming and being in a community of believers,
Yep.
God was able to minister to her
Yep.
through one of His other children.
Yeah.
And we need that as the body. Like, we just do.
Yeah. I always think, and I think as I get older, I'm more prone, of course, I embarrass my 14-year-old, but I'm more prone to tell somebody when I see them doing well. I'm more prone to tell somebody when they're bringing joy to other people, like, man, I see you bringing joy to people. Even if it's the person at the drive-thru, like, I'm just more prone to call things out that I think are beautiful in people.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think it's helpful. And I think, like you said, that happens in community, that when we're around each other, we can see the fruits of the Spirit and we can call them out. We can call people to recognize things that maybe they're dealing with something else that just feels so large. But if they go, oh my goodness, the Lord is using me, or the Lord does see me, I think that's big. I think that's big. I think it's important. And I think that happens in community, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Which actually is making me, right now when we're doing this, change my notes, or I'm adding to them with what we're about to get into. No, it's great. I love it. So we want to get into, I want to be able to give our listeners some practical, I'm going to call them tips or tidbits. If you have somebody that you come across that you feel like is struggling with some type of mental health concern, and I'm talking depression, anxiety, grief, I'm talking any of those types of things, anything you want to put in that mental health place. Just maybe some chaos and just not being able to focus or get attention in the right place, just feeling overwhelmed, whatever that looks like. So we're going to go through all that. But in a given year, around 20%, so 1 in 5, struggle with a mental health concern. So we are around people, whether we see it or not, that are struggling in some way. I mean, statistically, 1 in 5.
1 in 5. Yeah.
So that means all of us, we probably know at least 5 people.
Yeah.
Statistically, one of them is probably struggling. Maybe it's us at the time, right?
Yeah.
So at any given time. So what do we do with that? And I want to share these kind of tidbits just to help you support your loved ones, friends, coworkers, customers, wherever you find yourself talking to someone who may be dealing with, like I said, some of these issues. And I want to give credit where credit is due. I am taking this from Mental Health First Aid, which is a nationwide training program through the National Council of Mental Wellbeing. I'm actually have been in the past a mental health first aid trainer, so I love what they do. But they specifically teach people how to help somebody in a mental health crisis. And we're not talking about that today. We're talking more about support. So I'm using a little bit of their framework, but I'm switching it up for what we are talking about here on the podcast. So we're not talking about a mental health crisis per se. We're just talking about supporting someone with a mental health concern. So 4 of these steps I am borrowing from them, and I just want to give credit where credit's due. So the first one, and this is where I just made notes from what Becca said, is it's A. This spells algae, but if you're interested,
Nice.
it's because Mental Health First Aid actually was first created in Australia.
Oh. Okay.
And so I'm not sure the significance of algae in that. There's a bear and a mascot. It's really great. If anybody wants to be mental health first aid trained, it's a national certification. Go look it up. I'll actually have links in the show notes here in case you're really interested in going through that, because it is an amazing training. But anyway, so this spells algae. I'm just changing up a little bit what the letters mean. So I had here approach the situation with prayer. But what I want to add, just from what Becca was saying, is being aware. I think the more that we're aware and we're asking God to be able to pray for somebody, it doesn't mean you have to go up to somebody if you see them. You could just pray.
Yep. Yeah.
But A would be approach the situation with prayer. Whether you see somebody, whether you're in the moment talking to someone and they're revealing something of a struggle and you really want to be Jesus in that moment, or you don't know how to care, comfort, help, just approaching the situation with prayer.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in the moment and we're going to need to do that. Sometimes after we talk with someone, maybe it's a period of intercession where we really, really put them on our prayer list and we mean it when we say we're going to be praying for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we literally do that instead of just saying it.
That's not a bumper sticker.
No, it's not.
It's not.
But it can be so, especially if you've grown up in the Christian world, that culture, it can be so easy to just say, I'm praying for you. And we don't follow through. So if we're going to do that for a period of time, at least, and in that intercession, maybe that's that place on your A with approaching the situation with prayer. And then sometimes it can be right when you're talking to somebody. Just like I do in the middle of counseling or anything else. Can I pray with you? Can I just pray? I don't really know what to say, but I'm here. I want to pray. Can we do that now? And just praying over that person and speaking a blessing or speaking encouragement or asking God to give them the truth that they need, because we don't have it in the moment, but He does.
So I have a friend, and I grew up with her, and she's a beautiful woman of God. And when I ask her to pray, she always either prays for me or writes me back and asks God to bring a tangible
I love that. Yeah.
Something to the moment. She's like, speak to her in the moment, Lord, in a tangible way so she'll know it's you. And I use that now.
Yeah.
Because I think it's beautiful. Like, Lord, touch them in a way that you know, that
they will know.
Yes. Yeah. that you are hearing this, and on their behalf, you are showing that hesed love, that steadfast love that never goes away. I mean, if we could just like look up and see it, wouldn't that be great? I mean, we can look at creation.
Well, I literally ask God for neon blinking signs sometimes.
Yes.
And there have been sometimes there has actually been a sign.
Yeah.
Other times it's just figuratively, but
That's
I will
right.
literally neon
right.
blinking, Lord. I need it to be loud and clear.
Can I share a story?
Yeah.
When we lived in Vermont, sometimes I'd be praying while we were driving, and there are signs for moose everywhere. I'm pretty sure it's just for tourists because I've never saw one. But every now and then I'd say, all right, Lord, send me a moose. If this is where the direction, just send me a moose. And He never did, because those signs were for tourists. They weren't for me. But He sent me peace. He sent me a heart ready to maybe change something in those moments. Even when we're asking for those things, we're asking for God to turn our hearts, right? We're not asking. And so when my friend is asking for that, he's asking for me to be turned in a way that I'm seeing that God's still in control. And I feel like that's what that is. Even if we get a little frivolous with it, and if this light turns yellow, or Lord,
it's going to be a sign.
That's right. The different things we can do. Let's just focus on that. That's just saying that we're still giving God the control, right?
Yeah.
We're still putting Him in control. But yes, prayer is huge.
It really, really is. So A, approach the situation with prayer, and I'm also adding awareness there for our A. So L would be listen non-judgmentally, and believe it or not, this can be harder than you think. But what I'm going to tell you is while God can work on your heart while you're listening to try to make it non-judgmental, I'm going to tell you all right now the superpower that counselors learn and that we continue to grow.
Tell it.
Grow and perfect as we are in this. And it's what I call, they don't call it this in the books, but what I call the counselor face.
Okay.
So
they can't see that through the radio.
No, they can't. They can't see the counselor face. But if I was to describe to you the counselor face, all it is this place of no matter what is said, You just react as you're listening. Because we are. But whatever else would be, whatever thought or feeling or your own opinion, you don't wear your emotions on your face. That's the counselor face. We learn how to keep our emotions off of our face.
Okay.
Because it's not about us and our reactions in the moment. It's about the person that we're trying to help. And our reactions and thoughts and feelings in the moment aren't going to be helpful for that person processing.
For sure.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
And what happens in that is we are able to allow that person to just feel safe and accepted in that moment. Now, that doesn't mean we agree with what they say. We don't. It's not about that.
Yeah.
It's just about having a posture of, I'm here to listen and understand you. And that's my goal.
Yeah.
I don't have any other intention. I'm not trying to persuade. I'm not trying to put a judgment. I'm not trying to have my own emotions about what you're saying. I'm just here to listen and understand. And that, it's hard for people.
Yeah.
Especially depending on the relationship you have with the person across from you that you're speaking with at the time.
Yep.
But if you can get that and truly actively listen to a person, it's our superpower. That's how we create a safe environment.
That's amazing. Because what that does is sometimes somebody's just got to get it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've been through
and
things.
they already know it's raw.
Yeah. I've been through things before and I thought, and you don't want to tell anybody and you don't know how to talk about it. But once you do, what is it? Bringing things to light, right?
Yeah.
Then you can deal with it. But the step of feeling accepted to be able to be listened to, that's huge. And I would agree that I've listened to some things that
Internally, I feel something about them. I do.
Yeah. Whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
Whether you want to or not. Whether you are.
Because we're humans and we have that stuff.
And yes. Or we've been affected by something similar to
Yeah.
it. I've lived enough life to be around a lot of even personal trauma or things close to me that people have dealt with. Mm-hmm. And so when someone brings something in, it can hit a nerve with me. And it's not helpful for me to bring my nerve up when they're trying to deal with theirs. So yeah, listening can active listening. You have to take yourself out of it.
Yeah,
because then you're opening yourself up. If you don't, then you can close off what the Lord might want to say to them through you.
And even in that place, coming from a biblical standpoint, when someone says something and you're like, oh, that's not really theologically sound, or
that's
God
interesting.
doesn't really feel that way. That's not the moment to say something. You've got to let them get it out and understand.
Let me correct you right now. Yeah, that's not the time.
That's not it. And that's the other thing about the counselor face. Again, it's about just listening and taking in where they are so that maybe we can help them or give them suggestions if it allows for that, which is kind of on down in our little acronym here. But you got to listen non-judgmentally first. You have to listen with acceptance and say, this is a safe place to do that.
I think that's definitely easier to do with someone who's not emotionally connected to you.
Oh, yeah.
I think...
super harder to do it with.
I'm thinking of a friend who was speaking some things about herself that weren't true, and I called her out real quick, and maybe I should have actively listened a little better. But I was kind of like, in the name of Jesus, that is not true, and we're gonna tackle this right now, friend. But maybe I could have listened a little bit better in the moment and let her unleash some of that. Maybe I was a safe place and I didn't give her that moment. So that's actually really good perspective for me to walk out of here with.
Yeah. And again, I think it depends on the moment
and your
relationship.
Yeah.
But yeah. So A, approach the situation with prayer. B, listen non-judgmentally.
L.
So L, yeah. B, I was like A, B, C. Yes, thank you. L. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. L, listen non-judgmentally. So here's the next part. G, give support and information. So I'm going to talk about the information part first because people need different types of support. So sometimes we have to figure out what that looks like. But for the information on here, I'm saying if you have good information about a mental health concern that they are going through and speaking with, then by all means, share that. If it's from a solid place. Now, if you watched, no offense, but if you watched a reel somewhere about this, that's not, That's
Go
not
like them on
information.
Instagram. Yeah, don't do that.
No, I'm talking solid mental
Yeah.
health facts, maybe that you can, like, for example, if for some reason you came across somebody that was in the middle of a panic attack and you just happen to be there and and you help walk them through that. Correct information would be most panic attacks last about 10 minutes. So the peak of them. So after that, your body is going to start gearing down. So if you find somebody in the middle of one of those and you happen to walk upon them, then you can kind of talk with them through that and say that, well, science says that this is going to last at its highest peak for about 10 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to stay here with you until your body calms down. I'm talking about things like that.
Yeah.
That could be, if you don't know any information, it's okay. You don't have to. I do this for a living.
Yeah.
But if you do, for some reason, have that information, you can share it in this moment. So we're praying, we're listening non-judgmentally, we're giving support and information. And like I said, the support could really look however that person needs. Maybe it is sharing a devotional or a podcast or a book on the topic that you know about or that you found helpful. Maybe it's more practical and they need like babysitting so that they can go do some self-care. Like it can look, is it a physical need that you can help support and meet? Is it an emotional need? Like, and what are your limits or what are you able to do to help support that person? And I think sometimes that depends on the role that we're playing in this person's life. But what can we do practically? Maybe they need a meal and just some time to relax.
I had a friend one time who was dealing with a sick child and a very hard marriage. And there was about 3 of us, and we decided to make our car a portable coffee shop. And so we went and got coffee and drove to her house and said, for 10 minutes, we're going to sit in the house, you're going to sit in the car, and you're in the coffee shop, and this is your breather.
I love that. Yeah.
And it was all we could do. Mm-hmm. She needed way more help than we could give, and she needed way more. The things that she needed were above what we could do. But in the moment, we just said, okay, we're going to give you 10 minutes, and that's all she could give. But we said, you're going to sit in the car for 10 minutes and drink coffee. So we quickly,
which still, even though you couldn't address all of that, she's feeling seen, supported. Mm-hmm. She's feeling loved in those moments. Yeah. Seen. Yeah. What if those were the moments that got her through?
Yeah.
Just being able to have the mobile coffee shop.
Not very clinical, but in the moment, you're thinking about
absolutely
somebody folding somebody's clothes or just the little things. I'm thinking about women especially. Men deal with different things, and I'm not quite as adept in those situations, but I'm just thinking women, sometimes we just need something that's on our list to be taken care of so that we can give brain power to something else or so that we can give prayer to something else.
Yeah. And if you've got, the other thing I'll say about the information piece of this is if you have a loved one that you know has a mental health diagnosis or is struggling in that area, go learn for yourself from some credible resources, because the more you can understand about what they're going through, the more you are actually going to know how to support them.
Yes.
So,
and not freak out.
Yeah.
Not freak out on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you learn that educating yourself helps you to stay calm so they can walk through something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's going to give us, it leads us to a break. So right now we've got the approach the situation with prayer, listen non-judgmentally, and give support and information. And now we're going to wrap up with 2 E's when we come back from this break, and then share a couple of Bible verses here at the end to send us out. So you are listening to The Merge, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Narrow Gate Counseling, providing professional counseling where you are. At home, at work, or on the go. Our virtual counseling services are convenient, affordable, and accessible on any device. For a free consultation, call 888-9-NARROW. That's 888-962-7769. Connect and learn more now at narrowgatecounseling.com.
Hello, I am LynnDee Horn. I'm your host for The Merge, and I have been sitting here talking with my friend Becca Autry about faith, mental health, and how to help support others that we come across or that we know in our life that may have a mental health concern. And so we're going to wrap up here in about the last 10 minutes. We've gone through our A, our L, and our G. So now we are down to our 2 E's. So the first E is encourage appropriate professional help. And that's that place where we don't want to be pushy in someone's life, especially if they are not ready, but we can always plant seeds. So what I would say is A, find appropriate professional help in this situation. So somewhere like a narrow gate counseling or somewhere that has what you would consider safe, grounded, a worldview that matches up with this person that you might be helping. So you want to be able to find a place like that maybe you can refer them to. But the other thing is, as a counselor, a lot of times when I first meet somebody, they have told me, I've had several people in my life tell me that I might really benefit from counseling. And I'm finally deciding to do it. I hear that so much.
Wow. Yeah.
And so don't think that those seeds aren't being planted. There's some research that says, depending on if you're looking at marketing or other things, that somebody needs to hear something 7 times before they'll do it.
Yeah.
So you don't know in what line, what seed you're planting.
Yeah.
But sometimes people may need to be encouraged to do that 7 times before they're willing to go, because that's a vulnerable place. This is a stranger. You're reaching out. You've got to maybe have hope that this is going to help. You've got to tell your story in a way. Maybe it's going to be uncomfortable because you're trying to avoid it. I mean, there's some real reasons why it can be very uncomfortable for people to think about that.
Yeah.
They don't know how it's going to go. So I think there's this place where don't be pushy about it. But if you do think that person could really benefit from professional help from a counselor, social worker, psychologist, marriage and family therapist, we all have different names, but we do a lot of the same stuff, then definitely just at least encourage or mention it. If it comes back like, I'm not doing that, that's fine. You just mention it and you back off.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
You can just say it. It'll be received or not, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that if you feel like it would be helpful, that you would encourage that. The other thing I do want to let you all know, if you don't, is if you are in a place where there is a crisis situation, or you're talking to this person and they are contemplating suicide, or you realize that they're really, really low, then you can call 911, but there's also the suicide hotline and the crisis line, which is 988. It's a national number. It's for suicide crisis, but every person on there is trained, and they will talk about any mental health crisis that somebody's going through. It doesn't have to be
to know.
It doesn't have to be suicide. They are also trained to help find resources. I know some people that personally have worked for 988. I know their process. Yeah. It's a good, solid one.
Wow.
So you've always got that in your back pocket.
That's
if you
emergency
don't know what to
too.
do,
That's right there.
Yes, 988.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And 911 can also transfer you to 988.
Yeah.
But if you want to go directly, 988. And then the last one is encourage self-help or other support strategies. And what I mean by that is this place, there's churches, there's other nonprofit organizations that have support groups like a grief care or a divorce care, or I know some churches that do like a 12-step program called Celebrate Recovery, which is like the Christian version of Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever. Yeah. So there are all of these things, but volunteering, exercising, maybe there's a nutritionist or a dietitian that someone needs to go to because it's really kind of something that's health related that may be also impacting somebody's mood. Getting connected with community, which Becca and I have already talked about today, with churches and stuff. I mean, there's so many things, if we're listening and can hear that person, that we might be able to encourage. That's just a next step for them.
And we might say, come do it with us.
Yeah,
come
absolutely.
to the gym with me. Come for a walk. Let's go on a walk. Or, I'm going to go move boxes for the food pantry next week. Come with me. Like, just including somebody in something maybe you already do, and you just see that they need to get out of their own brain space, or they need a shift so that they can think more clearly. Sometimes it's that simple. I think it's encouraging too to think about. I went to a therapist at my college when I was in college, And my parents were separated for a while, and it was just a really tough time in school, everywhere. And I remember how freeing it was to talk to somebody. So on this side of the microphone, not the counselor side, I always encourage people to go to therapy. I'm like, listen, you're going to be done with it. Like you'll get it out. You'll talk about it. They'll ask you questions that are appropriate. They'll keep you in a frame of mind that's healthy. And so I always encourage people. So I've had people in the past write me and be like, guess what? I went to therapy. Like, woohoo. Like, because that's what I tell them. I'm like, listen, you may cry for 2 days straight. And then the next time you may leave smiling because you've seen something shift. You were waiting for it. And so I don't mean to go back to the other E, but I always encourage people to step into that moment just because it can release some things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not somebody that's in your everyday life either. So it's just it can be a
like
very
your hairdresser.
Yeah. It can be a very safe place
That's right.
to be able to do that. So yeah, it is. All of this is so powerful. So let me go back through one more time. A, approach the situation with prayer or be aware. Just being able to look for that. G, give support and information. I skipped one. L, listen non-judgmentally. G, give support and information. E, encourage appropriate professional help, whatever that specifically looks like, and encourage self-help and other support strategies. So those groups that we're talking about, the community, maybe it's grief or divorce or volunteering, exercising, whatever. Sometimes it may be going to pet an animal, whatever that needs to be, depending on if someone's an animal lover and they want to volunteer at a shelter or something. I mean, there's so many different things that we can do that actually improve our mental health.
Yeah.
And they're simple.
Yeah.
They don't have to be complicated, big things. So I want us to be able to go out with just a couple of verses to think about how we can be peaceful, how we can pray for other people. Becca, would you have a verse that you would share?
I'd say personally first, I really respond in moments of personal crisis to Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I'm God. I'll be exalted among the heavens. I'll be exalted in the earth. In my moments of need, I need God to be a big God. And so verses that prove that he is big, he is in control, that he is the one who's going to get the glory, those are helpful to me. In counseling people one-on-one or in encouraging people, I love Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious for anything, but in everything in prayer and petition, make your requests to God. And the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard your minds and your hearts in Christ Jesus. It's everything. It's everything you need to say to somebody.
Yes.
I more often than not, one of the things I'll say to somebody in a crisis is call on Jesus. Peace will come. It comes quick. And that scripture just tells us that Christ is the one who will bring us peace and peace of mind. Both of those things are huge. So I use those. I live by those verses myself, but I use them constantly. And I'll say to people that aren't believers, call on Jesus. See, he has peace. He's got what you need.
He's called the Prince of Peace.
That's right. That's right. Like to me, that's like the big. That's the big deal, right? In this world where we're going to have troubles, to know that there is someone who hears us and brings that. It's almost immediate.
Yeah,
it's almost immediate, and it's just amazing. So that's where I go, and that's where I turn people to.
Yeah, I love that. I love that verse for us. I love that that can go into the giving support and information. That verse right there. If you need one, go ahead and highlight that one.
Yeah.
Well, Becca, thank you so much for your time today and for us being able to talk about all of this. I know that it's going to be helpful, and it just even reminds me of some good places where I can continue to be aware and ask God, even outside of what I do for a living, like where can I make an impact?
Yeah.
Like where can I be helpful? So I want to leave you and our listeners with this blessing from number 6 and 6:24. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Thank you so much for listening to The Merge, and we will be back next time.
You've been listening to The Merge, hosted by LynnDee Horn. You can always find a copy and catch up on past episodes. Just subscribe to The Merge anywhere you listen to podcasts.